So right now, continuing with the review, we are moving on to DragonCraft. And for DragonCraft, we'll start off with the legendary. It's a 8 cost, 8/4, Ouroboros, the Dragon of Infinity or something, I don't know. Stat wise, it's kind of bad. It has too low of a HP in my opinion. Its fanfare is deal 3 damage to an enemy. So this can either be a follower or the enemy's face, which is pretty good, I guess. Its last words is restore 3 health to your leader, then put an Ouroboros into your hand. So as long as it's not banished, it should be able to produce infinite resources for DragonCraft, which is pretty useful which will be pretty useful in the new meta, I guess, because it's very late game based. The only thing I'm worried about is how do I put this? He's a very high costing card, which means at the end of every single turn when you play, you probably only need to be able to play him and probably one other card, because he'll be playing him for 8 mana, and then after that the next card will probably be 2 cost. So yeah, he might not be the most feasible thing to play. His last words does help with your survivability. It restores 3 defense to your leader, but other than that, it's kind of a very slow card, I guess. But I don't know, he might work out very well in the late game, simply because maybe your opponent has already run out of Evolve Orbs by then. Then it's just a game of resources and survivability, so dealing 3 damage to clear things off and restoring 3 health. It's gonna be a pretty interesting and cool effect to play around with, I guess. So I'm not very sure of how good he is, but he seems pretty interesting to use. Following that, we have the second legendary. It's a 5 cost 4/5, not bad. Sibyl of the Waterworm. Her fanfare is gain an empty play point orb if this card is played on your 5th turn or later. So it doesn't matter how many play point orbs you already have, it matters on what turn you played her. So 5th turn or later, not too bad, I guess. At the end of your turn, restore 3 defense to your leader if Overflow is active for you. So it's another card to help with the survivability of DragonCraft. It helps to boost your play points, which once again, DragonCraft, very good. And it helps you to survive in the game with restoring 3 defense to your leader. Of course, you need Overflow to be active, but it's DragonCraft, so it's definitely gonna be very, very simple to get to Overflow. So yeah, generally it's just, in my opinion, it's just a pretty good card to help survive to the late game, where you can play your finishers for DragonCraft. So yeah, I think she would be run at like 2 copies per deck. So just to help with survivability and play point boosting. Next we have a 6 cost 1/5, pretty bad for stats, but it's the card is Phoenix Rider Aina. Her skill Storm, okay, and fanfare gain +1/+0 for each other follower in play. So just judging by this skill alone, excuse me, for each other follower in play, I'm assuming this counts to your opponent's followers as well. So the maximum damage you can have her on, assuming your opponent has 5 followers on their side and you have 4 followers on your side, you can bump her up to 10 damage, which is pretty insane. But I think the average will be around 4 to 5, because your opponent will probably have like 3 followers, maybe you have 1, so around 4, 5, 6 will be her average attack, I think, after her skill, which is not bad for a 6 cost, and she has Storm as well, so she'll be a pretty good finisher for DragonCraft. So yeah, and even without even if she can't like finish the game, she's also not bad for trading. She has 5 health, which is it's not the highest, but it's pretty good. And her main I guess good point is Storm. So yeah, it's a pretty good card. I think you could run in quite a few DragonCraft decks. Moving on, we have Rahab, a 4-cost 2/5, not the worst. His skill, Ward. At the end of your turn, gain +1/+0 for each of your remaining play point orbs. So it's an interesting mechanic. It's the first time a card has had this skill before. Gain +1/+0 for each of your remaining play point orbs at the end of the turn. So I'm presuming in the best case scenario, you just want to drop him and then not play anything else in the turn, so you can bump his attack as high as possible. The interesting thing is he has Ward, so I'm presuming when you play him, you're hoping your opponent does not have a removal spell. Then your opponent has to trade some followers into him to get through him to deal damage to the face. So I guess he could work out both as an early game Ward, a 4-cost 2/5 isn't the worst, and as a late game kind of defense, high attack defense Ward. So it does work, just that I'm not sure about how good he will be, simply because he only has 5 health, plus you can't really play anything. You try not to play anything else on the turn you play him, so you can activate his second skill. So I'm not sure how good he'll be, but I'll try to test him out. I think he'll be more of a mid-range card just for his Ward skill. Maybe use him as a slightly more late game defense because of his second skill, but yeah, for now I'm not very sure of him. Moving on, we have a spell, 4-cost, Dragon Slayer's Price. So skill is discard your hand and then deal 5 damage to all other followers. So when I see discard your hand, the first thing I think of is discard DragonCraft, which is kind of, really, it hasn't been played a lot, but it does have quite a bit of potential. And the second part of the skill, deal 5 damage to all followers. This includes your followers as well, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. But the dealing 5 damage to all other followers can really help to give board clears, which I like a lot. And also, if you have the discard DragonCraft amulet, the Dracomancer's Rune, you simply can draw a new hand after discarding, so it's not bad. I'm not sure whether of its feasibility in non-discard DragonCraft, because assuming, say you're playing DragonCraft and you have 0 cards left in your hand and you top deck this card, so basically you can play this card for free. But it requires a very specific scenario when you already have no cards in your hand to play it properly. So I think this card will fit more in discard DragonCraft than anything else. So it's gonna be a good card, I think, for discard DragonCraft, just to reset the field a little bit. So yeah, I think that's about it for this card. And next we have Lightning Blast. Kind of reminds me of another card from Yu-Gi-Oh, but I'm not gonna say anything. So it's a 6-cost spell, which is kind of on the expensive side, but its skill is banish an enemy follower or amulet. So you have something that can remove amulets, which means you can take care of Haven Crafts and Statue Seraphs, or you can banish enemy followers, which means you can take care of Shadowcraft's Last Word minions. And also, the second part of the skill is awesome. Enhanced 10, banish all enemy followers and amulets. So basically, if you play it on 10, of course, before I go too far, it's 10 costs, so it'll be taking up everything you have on that turn. But its skill is insane, banish all enemy follower and amulets. So no matter what your opponent has on the board, it's going. That's the insane strength of this card. Of course, it might not be so justifiable to play 3 copies of it, because it's quite a high cost card. Even for just standalone removal, it's quite a high cost card. So I think 2 to 3 copies is okay in a late game deck, but in a more mid-range deck, probably only 1 to 2 copies of this card. But I will not deny this card is very strong and has gotten me very excited for DragonCraft in the new expansion. HONOBI no BURSTO stream! So moving on, we have a 5 cost 4/5, not bad. Venomous Pussworm, I guess. So his skill is, at the end of your turn, randomly discard one of the lowest cost cards in your hand and gain +2/+2. So from a 4/5, he'll turn into a 6/7, then a 8/9, and then a 10/11. So once again, it plays towards discard DragonCraft for randomly discarding low cost cards. And it's one of the few cards in DragonCraft where instead of discarding and like doing removal, you discard and gain stats. Because most DragonCraft cards I've seen now is when you discard, you deal damage to the enemy face, or when you discard, you remove, you do damage to enemy followers. I think this is the first card to discard a card and then gain stats. So it's definitely a good card for helping fight for the board for discard DragonCraft. And yeah, I think it's got to fit in well to discard DragonCraft simply because it's got to be quite a high stat follower for a 5 cost 6/7 on the turn you play him. So next we have a 5 cost 4/4, slightly understated but it's fine. Wrath Drake. So fanfare, deal 1 damage to all other followers, or on an enhance 8, deal 3 damage instead. So I'm not so sure how I feel about this card. Like, I can understand this skill would work quite well against something like aggro decks where you just ping every single follower and then most of the aggressive followers with 1/1 stats will die. But I don't really see like the point in this card, kind of, because if you think about it, if you're up against more late game cards, the 1 damage wouldn't really do anything at all. So it's his enhance 8 deal 3 damage instead is slightly better, but once again I don't think it's really justifiable to play him inside the deck yet, unless the meta really shifts. And okay, maybe I should rephrase that. If you play him for the second half of the skill, I think it's fine, because you deal 3 damage to everything, it can clear off most injured followers. If you play him for the first half of the skill, it's really not gonna do much. So I'm not sure whether it's justifiable to run him in the deck, maybe on the lower end, maybe 2 copies to 1 copy of him. But other than that, I think he's just pretty generic. And the thing about his skill is it deals 3 damage not to enemies, it's to all followers. So he hurts your own followers as well, which kind of lowers my opinion of him. Moving on, we have Wind Reader Zell. He's a 2 cost 2/2, which is the norm, and he's a vanilla, except after you evolve him, he gets the skill give an allied follower Storm if Overflow is active for you. So this is a very, very interesting card, and what I'm thinking of, the first thing that popped into my head is, let's take the highest stat follower, add it together with this card, and just hit your opponent's face for as much damage as you can. And the first thing that popped into my mind was Servant of Darkness from the Prince of Darkness deck. So as you know, DragonCraft already has a Prince of Darkness deck, links in the description, but DragonCraft is one of the few classes that can play Prince of Darkness quite consistently because they can get up to a high number of play points quickly. Combined with his skill, you can give Servant of Darkness, which is a 13/13 Storm, which means you can hit your opponent's face straight for 13 damage if your opponent's not careful. So I'm interested to see what kind of decks he will go into, because I think in most generic like late game DragonCraft, his skill wouldn't be the most useful because I think DragonCraft focuses more on removal. As you'll see, you already have that lightning blast, so you probably won't need to do much trading. And also, it's not so much, a lot of DragonCraft cards already have Storm. So his skill, I think he'll be used more as a combo piece in more combo-esque DragonCraft decks. So we can move on to the next card. Is a 5-cost 3/5, kind of low on the attack, Hippocampus. And he has what? That's about it. He's a 5-cost 3/5 with ward. Okay, but the interesting thing is his second half, which when after he evolves, instead of getting the normal 2/2 or 1/1 stat increase, he gets a 4/2 stat increase to become a 7/7, which doesn't have ward. It's kind of interesting, but not really. I mean, like, it just becomes a 5-cost 7/7 after you evolve him that doesn't have ward anymore. But it's, in the end, it's still a vanilla. So I'm thinking maybe in Take 2 he will be more useful, but in Constructed, not that much. Yeah, that's about it. Moving on, we have Aqua Narrate, I guess. It's a 3-cost 1/1. Fanfare summon a Mega Locker. If anybody of you don't know, a Mega Locker is simply a 2/2. There was some idea of making a Mega Locker deck because there was a card that the skill was once you evolve that card, all your other Mega Lockers evolve along with it. But nobody really got into making such a deck. So I think this card, it tries to push forward that deck, but really it's not doing that much. Second last, we have Dragoon Scyther. It's a 3-cost 2/2. And okay, it's a little bit understated, but that's fine. It has Bane, which is useful, and Fanfare gains Storm if Overflow is active for you. So this is kind of similar to the Ruthless Assassin from Swordcraft, where it gains Storm if there's a certain requirement is fulfilled. For Swordcraft, I think you need a commander. For this, you need Overflow to be active, which once again, DragonCraft is very good at getting Overflow. And it has Bane, which means you can just use it to remove something. So I'm guessing this will be more of a force removal card, which is pretty good because there have been cards which we'll get into the next few videos where you cannot kill them with removal spells. So something with Bane I think will be much more useful as well. Much more useful for DragonCraft right now. So you know what I'm talking about once you reach Havencraft. So I think she's a very useful card and will probably be played a lot in most DragonCraft decks. Lastly, we have a Amulet, which is rare for DragonCraft. A 1-cost Amulet, Dragon's Nest. The skill is, at the start of your turn, restore 2 defense to your leader, draw a card, and destroy this amulet if Overflow is active for you. I don't think people really understand the power of this card. At the start of your turn, restore 2 defense to your leader, which means it's already extremely strong because you keep your leader alive by healing him for 2 at the start of every turn. Draw a card. So it's basically as good as what's it called? It's basically as good as Direbond from Bloodcraft, just that you don't deal any damage to yourself. And destroy this amulet is Overflow if it's active for you. So simply means once you reach Overflow, this amulet will stop activating, which is good enough because the thing about DragonCraft is sometimes there's survivability issues where it doesn't reach Overflow and a lot of its effects don't activate and it dies before that because, as you know, DragonCraft is a very late game deck. This card, not only does it keep DragonCraft alive, helps it draw more resources, at least until it reaches Overflow. And it's 1 cost. It's a 1-cost bronze rarity card. So I think it's gonna be extremely strong and extremely useful in a lot of decks. And it has no countdown. It lasts forever until Overflow is active for you. So even if you don't play any play point increases, it will last for 7 turns, assuming play from turn 1. So once again, extremely useful card, and I think it'll be played three copies of it in every single deck because it's just so useful. So I think that will end it for the DragonCraft section of this review.